Hey Redemption Fellowship, I'm so excited to have a special guest with us here today, Dr. Chad Starks. He's amazing. I've heard so much about him for so long, and I'm so honored that he agreed to talk with us today. As you guys know, it's MLK weekend, and what an incredible person to just look to for when it comes to diversity. And Dr. Chad is here with us today. You're an author, a speaker. You are also a criminologist. I know I was looking at your bio and saw all the awards from different universities just for diversity and the work that you've done. I know you do workshops, and just I can tell by talking to you that wherever you are, you're going to get in there and try to make it better. You're going to get in there and try to help bring change. And I think that is awesome. Also, you know, Hall of Famer, Wofford College athlete, so a man of many talents, and I'm just excited that he's going to talk with us today. I know that you are super involved too, just in the community, Big Sister, Big Brother organization, and you know, I love that. I love that people that don't just talk about it but are about it and really kind of use every aspect of their life to help do change. I know you travel the country. Some of the things that you focus on are implicit bias, culture competency, structural inequality. So we're going to start off today. I want to tell you a little bit about our audience. We have 200 amazing pastors from all over the country, some in big cities, some in small cities, some have 1,000-member churches, and some have storefront churches. But I think one goal that they all have is diversity. Our pastor, Pastor Ron, is super diverse and lives it, and each of these pastors is passionate about it too. But I thought it would be great to bring you in just to kind of share your perspective. We're all, as pastors and leaders, we're hungry to do more, to be better, and to constantly make an impact wherever God's put us. And so that's what I'm excited about you sharing today. So can you tell everybody just kind of an overview of what you do, what you feel like your sweet spot is, and how God's been using you all these years to bring change to these communities?
Let me start off by saying thank you, Ashley, for giving me this opportunity to do what I call is sharing my purpose. What I like to think that I bring to the table is a diverse way of thinking about issues that has been plaguing our country for hundreds of years. I'm very fortunate that I've had both formal, which I always practice whenever I have conversations. Believe in two types of education, formal and informal. And of course, we really love to applaud the PhDs and the criminology and the formal ways of learning that are structured, but I also think there's a great value in our lived experiences. And that's what I title as informal education. And oftentimes that identity, we've been asked to strip those instead of being an inclusive way of understanding how to navigate different spaces. So I bring a challenging way of thinking that, hey, the way I grew up in the community I grew up in, from every institution, a family of public schools, of formal education, of higher education and government, I use a combination of interdisciplinary approach to challenge traditional ways of thinking. So I would say my sweet spot would be is to be genuine and being authentic in challenging traditional ways of approaching the issues that have plagued us for a number of years, and be both, you know, not just be an educator, but also be on the ground as activists to hopefully impact individuals as well as structures to produce a more harmonious society and, you know, change the definition of love some. You know?
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, you know, one of the things you mentioned, love, and I think all these pastors, you know, have big hearts, definitely. And sometimes I think as leaders, we have big hearts and we love people, but we don't always know, like, what can we do and how can we continue to improve this, and how can we be a part? So can you speak to that just a little bit? Like, we have pastors in all these cities, and you know, on a high level, what are some things that we can do as pastors and leaders in our city to make sure that diversity is always a priority and at the forefront, and that we can communicate that to our cities as well?
Right. I think one of the first things we have to do is a great deal of self-reflection. In the work that I do, I start off most of my conversations talking about identity. And when you can self-reflect on your own identity to address those unconscious biases that, out of love that our parents and our grandparents contextually, that they gave us based on informal education, just the value of what's the difference between good and bad, the value of right and wrong. Regardless of where you grew up, whether it was race, gender, socioeconomic status, there was some type of value system that was given to you. And both of us being from the South, historically, I know for African Americans, that first education was called manners. We wanted to hear whether or not you were yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and it comes from a history of slavery, which we are very conscious of. But that informal education gave our parents, grandparents, some type of definition of love. But contextually now, we challenge the way we define the definition of love, right? Some of us show most of our love as a response to issues. I'm going to be there when you're going through something. I'm going to be there when you slip or when you fall. What my work does and what our firm does is we want to do more prevention. We want to give more access to resources. And resources aren't just about money or jobs. Resources are information. And we understand that if you get more access to information which will inform your decision making, then you're more qualified to make better decisions. And in institutions of schools and families, out of this traditional way of love, we are afraid sometimes to have some of those conversations that are going to equip our children, going to equip our communities, going to equip our church members with some armor so that they can make some very tough decisions. The world is tough. Society is very challenging. And I would ask my pastors to join me in becoming more equipped and getting uncomfortable, to get comfortable, to have some of these challenging conversations. Service deserves more than a good heart. It deserves a level of expertise. And for some reason, we keep focusing on, oh my God, I need to go help those people. I'm going to go volunteer. But unfortunately, we should equip you with understanding. Before that.
Right.
Like I have a responsibility as an educator to equip you with the skills to create another tool in your toolbox before you step into a population that's been marginalized or has been alienated. And that informal education matters because those folks that have been separated from society or have been denied access to resources, they need to know that there's going to be an inclusive opportunity. Do you see me? Do you understand what I've been through? More so than I love you.
Right.
And I want to do more for you. Well, most often, if you can relate to my experiences, then I'm going to be able to trust you. And then if I can earn your trust, right, turning that power structure on its head, then most often you can pour into people in different ways than you thought you could. And that's how we want to approach the individuals, the leaders, the pastors, the teachers, the law enforcement, the politicians. We want to start off with self-reflection and identity and say, hey, I need to challenge some of the ways that my informal education has allowed me to have some implicit or unconscious bias.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, I love how you said that we have a responsibility, because no matter how good our heart is, we have a responsibility to just to study and to learn things that we don't know. Like you said, we all grew up different. We all have different first truths and things that are stuck. Well, we're going to talk in a little bit about how you can help equip further in detail. But also I wanted to talk about a lot of times, I know, were you in Lynchburg when everything happened? I know you were...
In Charlottesville?
Yeah,
yes.
In Charlottesville. Yeah.
I was in Lynchburg when it happened in Charlottesville.
Right.
Yes.
So, when things happen, when crisis happens, I think, obviously we want to do what we can on the front end to educate ourselves and to try to be preventative. But when stuff does happen as churches, as people, how can we respond as pastors and leaders and to not help make the situation worse, but to just help and be there in the time of need?
We have to understand that our opportunities are organic. And I often think that when the telephone rings, then we're supposed to answer it. these things that happen in society, there are invitations for our leaders to step up and say that as a person that has been afforded these opportunities, I am going to speak to the issues in a genuine and authentic way. Most often we have a fear of the consequences of, well, that may impact,
Right.
and I don't want to say selfish because, economic viability is huge and employment, and we all want to be affirmed. But I often think about those actors and leaders, activists and leaders that I studied. And fortunate enough that we're talking about a person that I honor probably the most in my path has been Dr. King. That's exactly what he did. And historically speaking, he would always have two conversations. He would talk to the individuals, but his responsibility was to challenge the structures, the legislative policies, to challenge the ways that we are interacting through our institutions and agencies. And he put himself in harm's way.
Wow.
Most often. He didn't shy away from it because he understood that he had a responsibility to be the voice, to be the face, to be present. And my firm, we want to create messengers of social justice. And I would love and ask that our leaders and our pastors view it through a different lens when these organic issues that continue to plague our community, and say, hey, from an interdisciplinary approach, hey, Dr. Starks, can you meet me over here? And how about we go stand in front of the camera, or we go stand in front of these communities, and let's both take our blessings and let's challenge the ways that these things are producing the outcomes that we don't want.
Yes, I love that. Well, talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you work? I know you're traveling all the time, all over the world. And tell us what are some of the things that you do in some of these different communities?
So let's talk about NASA real quick. I guess that's a good place to start. I'm an associate director with Delaware Space Grant. And as a PhD student, I got some relationships through basketball. All former football players think they can play basketball. So, trying to stay in shape, and I met one of the top physicists in the game.
Oh, wow.
And he and I built a relationship through sports, but also an intrigue of education and what was my research interest like and what was his. And he started taking me to lunch, and we started sharing our experiences. So he shares with me that they were facing probation for a space grant program that offers undergraduate internships, research opportunities, scholarships, and graduate fellowships. But it didn't have enough students of color even applying, let alone receiving awards. And I basically begged him for me to bring in my social science and personal experiences to do an interdisciplinary approach, right? Do a team approach to creating a different outcome to uplift a community that has not been given the same access.
Wow.
And what we did was I had to put on, go through the dog and pony show and make that environment feel comfortable with me, because I've been introduced to these environments and learning how to navigate those spaces, not losing my identity, but also gaining their respect. There were two challenges that I faced, not only from a racial perspective, but STEM scientists are very difficult to invite that S to be social scientists. And of course, the blessing was that I was able to disarm them from some of those stereotypes that were attached to those professional identities, and they saw a way that I could bring my skill set to them. And now we have broken records in the last 6 years of women as well as students of color not only participating, but being awarded these opportunities.
That's awesome.
And I've been presenting at national conferences in Space Grant in Crystal City, Virginia. I've been going to the Hill to represent Delaware Space Grant to meet with some of the politicians about these ways of thinking. We just published an article in the Journal of STEM Education on this social science way of addressing underrepresented minorities in STEM. And I think we're on to something. So I have a genuine, authentic conversation when I'm going to these communities, whether it's higher education, whether it's a local parks and rec, which I'm a product of, is being able to respect the environment that I'm being invited in, but also bring in those experiences from formal and informal identities that I have to uplift and inspire everybody to say, hey, this is the way that we should address some of these issues.
Right.
So I've also been doing it with law enforcement officers as well.
That's good.
And preparing schools and preparing teachers and superintendents on cultural competency. Everyone is taking shots, right? Like our school teachers get shots, and our law enforcement officers get shots. But from an empathetic approach, like with the scientists, they haven't been trained the way I've been trained, with understanding society, understanding cultural identity, understanding behaviors. And I think we put them at a disadvantage to say, hey, because you graduated from this institution and you want to be a school teacher, we're going to send you into one of the most deprived resources, where kids are coming from, poverty, kids are coming from an environment where there's a great deal of alcohol and drugs, low education attainment. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad teacher. You just haven't been prepared to understand what these kids are going to bring into the school, which we should expect. I should expect, if we have communities that are deprived of resources, that there may be some social and emotional blockage that these kids are going to bring into the classroom, that I need to know how to respond to, and not use it as an opportunity to alienate them more, and referrals and suspensions and expulsions. Mm-hmm. And so those are some of the spaces that I've been fortunate enough to be invited into. Yeah, and hopefully, that we're going to create some more opportunities for everyone.
Yeah.
I do want to share one more thing.
Yes.
Diversity is about different ways of being, different ways of knowing, and different ways of acting. And differences should be our strengths. And if you think about it, right, like the more access to information, then it will empower us to be able to go in so many different communities and be comfortable.
Right.
And that is what I really want our pastors and our leaders to know, is that the more diverse we are, then the better, more qualified pool of people, of professionals, of scientists, of sports, of pastors, of leaders that we're going to have. And that creates a more team approach, and you create agents of social change that way. And we don't have to keep looking for the titles of a PhD to be the only ones that can address issues that we aren't equipped. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I would think too, once you are diverse and you have diversity in your church, then you're able to have conversations with everybody, to always try to be intentional and inclusive, and just to continue that growth and that listening to each other, learning about each other. And you get what you are. Our pastor teaches all the time, you get what you are, and you're never going to attract what you're not. And exactly. So just taking steps, to be that. Well,
and if you think about looking at it throughout history, most of our leaders, one of the major qualities is that admitting that we don't know everything. We have this.
I love that. Yeah.
We have this confirmation
I don't know,
bias.
but yeah.
Yeah, but for some reason, even when I was writing my teaching pedagogy statement to go on the market as a PhD student to get a job, and I said that I was most excited about the opportunity to learn from my students. And one of my mentors was like, take that out. And I'm like, why would I take that out? She says, because when you get a PhD, you want the world to know that you know everything. And an institution of higher education may feel, if you think you're going to learn from your students, then you might not be the right candidate for us. I'm a lifelong learner.
Right.
We have over 5,000 cultures in this world. And I can't wait for the opportunity to go learn about this culture, to learn about this. And when you're able to share with people that have been isolated and segregated to one neighborhood or to one community, you can't open their eyes to dream. You can't dream with your eyes open if you can only see what's in front of you. So that way of understanding what diversity is in informal and formal education, that's what I would love for our pastors and our leaders to realize, is that we are sponges of life. And when the more access to water you get, which I equate to information and education, then the more we can wring out, in our community members or our church members or our students or our family or our loved ones. And I think we can practice it much more intently by being genuine and authentic. So.
Yes. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Well, you just talked about dreams, so I can't help but think of the late, great Dr. King. Mm-hmm. Do you have, talk to us, because it is MLK weekend. What do you have a favorite Dr. King quote? Or I know you've talked about him several times, but share with us that.
Eventually, silence is betrayal. That is my favorite Dr. King quote. Eventually, silence is betrayal. And I think it goes back to the question you asked about what pastors and leaders can do when some of these issues happen in our country. We have to have our voice and use our voice. If we keep continuously to ignore these issues, then whom do we expect to step in and to step out on faith in order to address these issues that we could change? It's great to have the individual conversations with your church members, but I need our pastors and our leaders to come join me in challenging these structures.
Right.
And I mean local government.
Yes,
I mean
everywhere,
public
all
education,
over. Yeah.
All over. And I mean all over the country. And realize that you have a great deal of respect from the community.
Yeah.
And we need you to come in and do those things. And that's what Dr. King would do. The whole thing around civil rights wasn't just about individuals. He was talking about individuals taking advantage of your opportunities and how, but he also was transformative in saying that there are structures that need to be torn down. He would always say that an unjust law is a law that should not be followed. And that's heavy because you have a lot of our kids and a lot of our children today that are actually practicing that. But with the way we've structured our criminal justice system, they're ending up behind bars.
Right.
But there was a time in this country where that was the approach in order to get structural change, to bring attention to the consequences of being marginalized and alienated and not given access to education or public service or restrooms. But now in this country, I think that we need to be reminded again, especially on Dr. King weekend, is that that's exactly how we should be approaching that, as a more community perspective to break down some of these barriers and these structures. What's wrong with a local politician and a pastor and a PhD and a dentist and a medical professor and a school superintendent and a coach? What's wrong with us getting together in a room and bringing our levels of expertise that we've been trained with and coming up with an approach and say, all right, from an authentic perspective, what do you bring so we can create a team of activists so we can start breaking down these barriers?
Yeah. Well, I love that you said team, because I think a lot of times, individuals feel like I don't have this skill, or I don't know this, or I don't have this expertise. But a lot of times it's just being a connector. And it's like, I don't know everything, but I know Dr. Starks. And then, like you said, we have this coach over here, we have this. And so working together with your cities and even kind of helping each other. And it takes a team. It's not one person, it's not one organization, it's everybody working together.
Yes.
So
I did some work in Lynchburg addressing Generation 2 poverty and creating the Education and Employment Institute. And I partnered up with Lynchburg City Government and challenged them to say, a lot of us use these constructs of poverty, low education, attainment to actually gain political positions over and over. But why don't we, from local government perspective, can we put up some resources to address it? And I'm proud to say that they gave a transportation, because transportation is an issue with poverty, and allowed me a bus and 2 bus drivers. I was able to get funding to have food, understanding that kids coming from impoverished communities, they need to eat.
Right.
I mean, it's cute to say that this kid doesn't want to learn, or he or she has their head down, but that young lady could be hungry.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever been hungry before out there world, but it's very difficult to focus on anything when your stomach is actually growling and needs some nourishment.
So y'all help take care of the natural needs so that they can receive and learn.
And believe it or not, I can talk. and my babies were in, as I called them, achievers. They would sit in a room with me for 3 hours, and I didn't take cell phones. And I didn't have any of my kids looking at phones or social media. They were engaged. They were engaged because I learned that I need to meet them where they are and understand some of the issues that they may be challenged with, that they have before they get into the classroom or before they get into the church. And I couldn't just put my arms around them and hug them and tell them that I love them. I had to address some of the issues so I could equip them with the ability for me to pour into. And fortunate enough, at the end of it, everyone got jobs, because that was the purpose of it. They became Lynchburg City employees.
Wow.
And I only had two seniors. Both of them enrolled in college right now. And I think community stakeholders. I reached out to former teachers. I reached out to the school district. I reached out to coaches. I reached out to some church members. I reached out to people that had an expertise that I didn't have, that I knew this population had been marginalized from, that they could benefit. And that's what it's going to take. It's not going to take one person. It's not going to take one identity. It's going to take a diverse group of people that want to get on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Starks, I am so thankful that you agreed to talk today, and I think that tell everybody how they can get in touch with you. I know you have your website. I can post and send them your contact info. I think too, we have our monthly meetings. I think we need to get him on one of our netcasts, one of our webinars, where we can kind of dive in and talk more. It's hard in a 20-minute video to kind of cover when it's such a deep subject and so many different ways that you can dice it up and look at it. But I want to end with one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King, and it's, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that, and hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." And I think us being believers and overseeing churches, I love that, because we have these body of believers that are in our cities that can all come together and make a huge impact through education, through love, through having hard conversations and getting in there. But thank you so much for joining us today. You guys take advantage of him. I'm going to post his information, and we're going to try to keep him involved with the fellowship. But do you have any closing remarks or any encouragement for these pastors and leaders that are in their prospective cities?
Yes, I would like to first compliment you and express my gratitude for taking on such a huge responsibility. Want to express my gratitude, but also want to remind us that there's more work to be done. That I think that we've gotten a little comfortable with some of the conditions that others are being consistently painting through, trying to figure out this next step. But I would also invite you to allow me to come in and help. I want to be a servant leader. So I too am looking for more ways that I could bring my skill set and my expertise and building a better community. And I'm going to be fair and open and honest about it, transforming lives. I think that we got a great opportunity right now. Well, a number of the conversations that we thought had been hidden and buried, that they have come to light right now. And I think this is an invitation. It's an organic way for us to step up as leaders and create change.
Yeah.
But it's going to take some team effort, and I would like to be a part of it. I can be reached on Twitter at bchadphd. bcsandassociates.com is my website, where we have a newsletter. We would love for you to sign up and also send some comments in on some of the issues and concerns that you would like for us to address. Of course, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. My phone number is 434-329-9002. I'm fortunate that I've been in Greenville now for about 6 months, that I've opened a second office here. I'm still headquartered in Lynchburg, Virginia, but we are very easy to locate and find. And please invite me in and let me come share.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much once again. You guys, I'll post all his information and email it out. But we're praying for you, and we know God's going to use you to do great things. Thanks, guys.